Hi everyone. This is Mutale from the Millennials Perspective podcast, and today we have an amazing guest with us who's going to give us we're going to have a perspective and just a short discussion. Her name is Inota Cheta. I hope I got the name right.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so in 20, just a bit of a background. In 2018, she was a Mandela Washington Fellow. In 2019, she was selected as a young leader for the European Development Days from over 1,000 submissions. She is the co founder of She Entrepreneur, which is an organization that looks at enhancing the livelihoods of people through a focus on entrepreneurship, work readiness, and financial literacy. And then she is a global leader at Restless Development. There are so many inspiring things that you've done, but those were some of the things that I picked out. And then she also recently started a sort of um, go planner called Design Your Future, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, before we get into it, can you just tell us what made you start Design Your Future?
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's been a long time coming, and thank you so much for being so patient. Um, yes, just as what Mutale said is correct. I'm a Mandela Washington Fellow, 2018, as well as the European Development Days Young Leader 2019. I've also participated in research work with the University of Cambridge and Restless Development as a joint project. It was basically focused on youth livelihoods in Africa. So it took a holistic approach on what are youth doing in Africa, how are they getting by, how are they earning a living, and so forth and so on. And the point was basically just to uh,
Mhm.
gather information in order to create recommendations for policymakers around Africa. I'm very passionate about youth work. I believe youth are the future, and it's very important that we start
Yeah.
taking up leadership roles.
Mhm.
So
Nice.
that's basically me in a nutshell. Back to your question, what inspired me to start the planner? I realized that planning is important, and if people do not plan, failing to plan basically is planning to fail.
Planning
And
to
sometimes,
fail. Yeah.
exactly, we take it for granted that everybody has the tools that they need in order to plan, but um, we need to help people plan
Mhm.
because I think we have so many great ideas out there, but if you don't put them in a structured way of saying this year I want to do this, next year I want to do this, and so forth and so on, it becomes
Mhm.
difficult for you to achieve your goals. So that was basically the mindset behind that, and we've got very great feedback from people, and I'm actually very overwhelmed by
Yeah.
just the appetite that people have for wanting to have a better life and wanting to create goals and actually achieve them. It's been very
Mhm.
encouraging.
It's also like because I downloaded the first one, the one from January to April and April to May, and it like sometimes you know what you want, but you don't know how to structure it.
Mm-hmm.
So the planner has really helped me like be specific because sometimes you can just generalize things and then your goals are not smart. But the planner has really helped me be specific, have a timeline, how I'm going to measure it, especially the April one where you there's a part that says the COVID-19 slowdown.
Yeah.
Are you working from home? Yeah, it's been really helpful.
I'm happy to hear that.
Thank you for putting that out there.
I'm very happy to hear that it's been helpful, and I realized that as we're getting into a new quarter, that we're dealing with different
Mm-hmm.
dynamics. At the beginning of the year, it was planning for the year,
Yes.
and then we had Corona, and then now it's just different
Mm.
dynamics altogether, and it requires a different sort of planning. So I'm happy to hear that it was helpful for you.
Yes. So we're actually going to be talking about the coronavirus and how agribusinesses, not only agribusinesses, but how SMEs can plan for the time ahead, like what things can they do better. Every time there's a challenge, there are opportunities and challenges, and there are also tools that you can use to overcome those challenges and to take advantage of those opportunities. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what do you think has been the what do you think are some of the challenges that SMEs have been facing during this coronavirus?
Well, I think the challenges are quite a number. Um, the obvious ones are certain industries are shut down, certain
Yeah.
businesses were asked to close. So that means no business for them anymore.
Mhm.
But not only just being asked to close, but
Yes.
how long are we closing for? There's a lot of uncertainty around that.
Yeah.
We thank goodness that now restaurants have been allowed to open, so that side of the business, that business is opening up, but there are other businesses that are still closed for now. So that in itself poses a challenge. But also not
Mhm.
only the businesses that were asked to close down, but businesses that fed into that ecosystem. For instance, if you say a restaurant is closed, there are
Yeah.
farmers who are supplying to that restaurant, right? There are beverage companies that are supplying to that restaurant. There are cleaning services that are going to maintaining the infrastructure there and things like
Yeah.
that that you don't think about. So those companies that were feeding into those industries, those were also affected. So I think there's quite a number of industries that have been affected by Corona, no doubt. It could even be people who supplied food to canteens at universities and at schools, right?
Yeah.
When we look at Corona and how it affected people, we need to take a holistic approach because sometimes we look at it as the direct business that was asked to shut down. If it's a school, if it's a restaurant, if it's a gym, for instance.
Yeah.
But we need to also need to look at what industries or what businesses are supporting that company to run and function as it is. So
Mhm.
that's really quite a myriad of businesses that have been affected by Corona.
Yeah. And then that's really true. And I think not only Zambia but everyone in the world has been affected. So obviously Zambia was very dependent on imports, and now because the borders have shut down, we've been forced to now start producing our own things locally. Quite alright.
Exactly.
There were market linkages that were being created, like for small scale farmers to link to markets or just for other businesses. Let's say people who produce masks now, hand sanitizers, all those things. We used to depend on the outside, on the surrounding areas, but now we've been forced to produce locally. So, what do you think are some of the opportunities? Even though I've mentioned some of them, what do you think some of the opportunities that SMEs can take advantage of during this time, even though there's been like a slowdown, or what can they do better to overcome some of these challenges?
So when we look at Corona, um, there are obvious winners, there are obvious losers, and there are
Hmm.
certain businesses that are in between.
Yes.
Um, when Corona just was announced and we realized that there were some cases in Zambia, the most obvious business that people decided to go into is anything to do with cleaning products, sanitizers, and
Mm-hmm.
disinfectants, and so forth and so on. But we also saw there were quite there's quite a lot of misinformation and rumors of, oh, this medication will work, oh, chloroquine will work, oh, you if you take
Yeah,
vitamins you'll be fine.
herbs.
After the cleaning products, then we see chemists are running out of vitamins, they're running out of chloroquine, they're running out of all sorts of
Yeah.
because people want to be the first ones to grab onto that and also resell at a higher price. But I think any business person needs to think long term. Okay, if I just don't want to win today, but long term, how can I adjust my business um, to accommodate the realities that are there on the ground? On a global scale, we've seen, say for instance, because people are staying at home, you're spending more time on the internet. I for one, I think I'm spending double the number of data bundles that I used to use before. What was the monthly pack is now like
Yeah,
2 weeks, and I'm getting a notification that you've depleted 90% of your
60%.
exactly, and you're surprised. You're like, this should have lasted the whole month. What's going on? So obviously, our internet service
15 GB
providers
feels like 1 GB.
exactly. So internet service
Yeah.
providers are obviously making good money, but now we see things like also video conferencing. Now we are yeah on Zoom or WebEx or Skype when before you'd be
Mm-hmm.
present. But most importantly for businesses, especially local businesses, I think um, one thing that we didn't have before is an emphasis on e-commerce, whereas now it's
Yeah.
more important than ever before. I said on a global scale, if you look at Amazon, Amazon they and the
Mm-hmm.
cloud was announced that it was going to add 100,000 new employees just to deal with the demand. But that trickles down to the reality on
Wow.
the ground, also for countries like Zambia. Now we know about delivery companies. Some
Mm-hmm.
people before didn't know that there were companies that were delivering to the doorstep, but those companies now have had to, yes, they've had
Exactly.
to grow and grow their staff and just sort of try to meet the demand. But for farmers particularly, I've been very impressed to see um, now we have
Mm-hmm.
people advertising things like buy vegetables in a box. So they give you a combination of a couple of vegetables
Yeah.
and deliver it to your doorstep, or a couple of vegetables
Mm-hmm.
and meat. So there's one company I've seen that focuses just on vegetables. I've seen another one vegetables and meat. So people are creating combinations now
Mm-hmm.
so that I don't need to go to a grocery store. I can have everything just delivered to my house, and that's amazing. And it's important for SMEs
Yeah.
to see how can I serve my customers better. Right now, I still have my customers, but my customers might not be able to come to me. What can I do to get to them?
Mm-hmm.
But also, maybe I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
all I grow is, for instance, watermelon and butternut. Not every household wants watermelon and
Mm-hmm.
butternut, but can I work with my neighbor who also has green beans and carrots and whatever they have, so that we can create
Yeah.
something that's
We come together.
exact.
Mm-hmm.
We can come together and create something that's of value and that's marketable and that has a higher demand. So I see opportunities. Yes, the corona has definitely affected how people do business, how the number of clients that would walk into
Mm-hmm.
your store and so forth and so on. But also that creates opportunities. How can I do things differently? How can I make sure that I have a sustainable business model even beyond corona?
Yeah. Thank you. That's so powerful, if I can say, cause I think now even in the past we never really used to see, especially people who are into farming, even post their stuff on social media. Maybe they would rely on going to Soweto
Yeah.
market and things like that. But now people are now beginning to think digital and think e-commerce. Like now people are sharing more stuff on Facebook, Twitter, and it's just amazing to see. Okay, so maybe one of the last things I would want to ask is, what tools do you think SMEs can use? Like just basic things that they should be able to do during this period so that they can be able to track how their businesses are doing, so that they can know, okay, maybe I need to do this better. Let's say, for example, if a business was doing delivering goods on credit, maybe now they have to say, okay, now we have to put stringent measures when we give our customers things on credit. Or maybe if they supply to Shoprite and then Shoprite says, okay, we'll pay you after some time, maybe now things have to change. So what tools do you think businesses and SMEs, agribusinesses, should now have in place, not only during the COVID-19 period but even after?
Okay. I think that one of the most important things, like I'm saying, is revisiting your business model. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the corona, yes, like we've said, corona might have disrupted the way we do business, but how can I, uh,
Mm-hmm.
how can I ensure that my business is sustainable going forward? So I think that's the number one thing. Look, taking time to sit down and saying, what is my business model like? What is my business like? What is my main business? How am I doing business? How has it been affected by corona? And then thirdly,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do differently? So it requires one actually taking time
Yeah.
to look at their business and analyzing what's not working, but how can I work around that? I'll give you an example. For instance, European countries, when Corona broke out,
Mm-hmm.
I think this could have been in Germany, one of the biggest distilleries, they stopped producing alcohol and they started producing sanitizer. And I've seen that in
Mm-hmm.
Zambia, one of our beverage companies has
Mm.
adopted that model in the last few weeks. So yes, I might have infrastructure, but if right
Mm-hmm.
now the demand, say, for whatever I'm producing is not there, is there a way of me turning things around with what's already
Yeah.
existing to produce something else that will
Already there.
marketable and that
Nice.
will be of value? So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very important to also research, check around, research around the world. What are people doing? what are people in my industry doing to adapt to what's going on to the
Mm.
reality? I think goodness that in Zambia we are not as hard hit as Western countries where people have had to offload so many gallons
Yeah.
of milk because there's no one to buy
To buy.
where vegetables are going. But so you've got no markets for your perishable things, like
Yeah.
throwing them away or just giving to or
Hmm.
to people on the street and things like that because you can't take them to a supermarket. The supermarket is not accepting those things anymore. So we are not at that place right now.
Mhm.
We actually, I think most people are still able to take their goods to market. The demand might have reduced, but for that quantity that has reduced, is it possible to find ways of reaching your your
Mhm.
your customers directly? And it's all about partnerships because we already have existing companies that are doing, say, for instance, delivery. Can I work with an existing company? Can I ride on somebody else that
Yeah.
is existing? So I don't have to invest in infrastructure to make this thing work, you know? So
Yes.
there are things like that that we can
Yeah.
do in order to make sure that we're still earning income during this period. Yes,
Surviving. Mhm.
last week there was talk about cassava being used for um, creating sanitizer. So the ethanol from cassava being used to create sanitizer.
Yes.
So there are things like that. You need to be really up to date with what are
Mhm.
people doing right now. Where is the demand and things like that? Because yes,
Doing.
with whatever you have,
Yeah.
can is if okay. So it's cassava is not being used for consumption. What can we use the cassava for? Is there a buyer right now
Mhm.
and things like that?
For.
So I think for Zambia, it's very important that we still stay positive because we haven't reached the worst. If we look at how bad things
Mhm.
are in other countries, we still have our supermarkets open, we still have our markets operating and things like that. So how can we
Yeah.
find a way to earn a living given the situation that we have?
Okay. Thank you so much for the insight.
Okay.
I think we have come to the end.
Thank you so much for hosting me.
Thank you very, very much, Inota. We've learned a lot, and I'm sure this is going to be beneficial to so many people out there.
Thank you so much. And I think it's very important that we have a millennial podcast like this. A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
as youth, sometimes we want to shy away from agriculture when agriculture is what feeds us. So I want to say big ups to you for
Yeah.
making this podcast, and I just want to encourage you to continue doing so. And I think it's very important that we have a voice in this space.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch.